Shalom, Boker Tov, Rabbi Eric Solomon, Raleigh, North Carolina. It is Monday, April 20th. We are here at Erev, kind of before Yom HaShoah, the day established by the State of Israel as Holocaust Remembrance Day. So for these few mornings, I'm offering teachings really focused on that, understandably. And I want to offer his teaching this morning in memory of Rabbi Ephraim Oshry. Alav Shalom, may rest in peace. A tremendous rabbi. I'll tell you about it in a second. I read one of his books of Tshuvot. Tshuvot, a responsa literature, legal Jewish texts where rabbis respond to actual Jewish legal questions that are asked in live time, based on the Talmud, based on the Torah, over time. Rabbi Oshry, maybe I'll put his obituary. This was in the New York Times in the comments section. He was just a tremendous figure and an extraordinary human being as well as rabbi. He was born in Lithuania, was a rabbi before the war, eventually went into the ghetto with the Jewish community, and numerous members of his family were killed in the Shoah. During the Shoah itself, he wrote responsa literature. People would ask him questions, Jewish legal questions, during the Holocaust. He then wrote down his answers to these questions. Like, for example, could you save your life by purchasing a Christian baptism certificate? And he'd answer that question based on Jewish law, write it down, tell the answer. He actually said, no, you cannot do that. That's one thing he said. He also said, you also cannot commit suicide. That was another one of his answers. Many powerful, horrific questions, but he answered them, and then he hid them in the ground, put them in kind of small pipes of some kind, dug them into the ground. After the war, he survived. He went back and retrieved them and ended up publishing these shuvot into outstanding books that you actually can read. They're just stunning. Then went forward to live in Montreal and in Quebec, and then eventually New York City, led a yeshiva that he founded there. And he was a person of great scholarship and great learning. The question I want to focus on that he is asked, this is after the war in New York, which is one of the ones that has touched my heart, and I've taught it before to our congregation, is he's asked by a young woman who survived the Shoah, who has the tattooed numbers on her arm. Can I remove it? She said, look, I'm a young woman. I want to get married. I don't want to look at this every day. It's painful for me. We can understand. Can I remove it? And some of you are aware that tattoos are forbidden according to the Torah. So first of all, this tattoo was put against her will. So no one's holding her responsible for that, of course. But one of the questions, should we remove it? Because it's against the Torah, number one. Second of all, it's from the Shoah, it's from the Nazis, Yamach Shamam, that they should, So why have this on you? Plus, it affected her ability to, you could say, date, to feel positive about herself. It's something she looked at all the time. So she went to the Rabbi Oshry, who was a survivor himself, said, what do I do with these tattoos? And you can read in his tshuva the struggle he has. So first of all, on a halachic level, if you remove the tattoo itself, is going to cause kind of a marking of the body. So that's a problem from a halachic perspective. On the other hand, it's allowing her to move on with her life. Bottom line, and you can read the tshuva, he says, you can't. You could cover it with clothing, you could cover it with cloth, but you can't, because in the end, what the Nazis want is for us as a Jewish people, and I would argue the world, to forget that the Shoah happened, to deny that it happened. And when you have those tattoos on your arm, you prove to the world that it absolutely happened, and it will never be forgotten. That's a heavy burden for one young woman to hold. I'm sure Rabbi Oshry is aware of that. But that really is the principal Jewish message, not only of the Shoah, but really of all of Jewish life. I've said it before, one of the takes on religion or history or life is that the difficult parts, let's just forget them, let's just delete them. Rabbi Oshry says there is no deleting. That tattoo is something that proves that horrors can happen, and it can turn from not only a source of enormous pain, which is true, but also even possibly to a badge of honor, in the sense that being a survivor is a positive. Being a survivor is a source of strength. It's hard to recognize this now. Sadly, there's so few survivors left. But there was a time after the Shoah, after the war, when survivors were embarrassed. I know this from my own grandparents telling me stories, and if you read the literature, they didn't want to talk about it. First of all, it was too traumatic. And there were those, they felt guilty, some survivor guilt. There's a lot of literature on this. And then there also were Jews who looked at them, sad to say, as weak. How could you let this happen? We all know this is not accurate, but this was a perception within diaspora, but certainly within the burgeoning state of Israel. The old Jew. So it wasn't discussed. That tattoo could be a source of embarrassment, say, I let this happen to me. Rabbi Oshry says, that tattoo is a sign that you are a survivor. You are someone that saw literally the pits of hell, and you found a way, somehow. Don't be embarrassed about that. As we look at people today, you're something with enormous courage, ability inside your soul to find a way through. It's about how we look at the story. Is that tattoo something to erase and be ashamed of, or is that tattoo? I remember Bill Gates in his biography before he died. I'm sorry, not Bill Gates, excuse me, Steve Jobs, in his biography before he died, with Walter Isaacson, in the opening passage. And he was adopted. Some of you know the story. And early on, when he discovered he was adopted, he was only 6, 7 years old, goes to his parents. He heard from school somehow he was being teased. When his parents said, Mom, Dad, is it true? Because they never told him. They were waiting for the day that I was adopted, that my parents, because they were being teased at school, they threw me away. They didn't want me. And he says his parents turned to him and said, well, we don't know what your parent situation is. We don't know the background. But it's not that you were tossed away or not wanted. We chose you. You are a chosen one. And Steve Jobs said that was so influential about his story. He's not adopted, and that's a negative, and that's somehow he was less than. He was selected. He was prized. He was a gift. It's all about the story. The story itself can be healing. Last thing. In Israel, in Israel's National Cemetery, one of the most powerful pieces is the Survival of Kin Memorial. I've been there numerous times with congregants on my own. It's a place where survivors from the Shoah came from Europe, had no family, orphaned, picked up, joined the Israeli military, burgeoning, and fought in Israel's independence, and then died in that war. You can imagine it. Coming off ships, breaking into, at that point, Palestine, and then dying with no survivors. There's a memorial specifically to them, because we as a Jewish people, embodied by the state, say we honor these people. They may not have had parents, spouses, siblings perish in the Shoah, who can bury them, honor them, put a monument, but we will. These people are not, as some have said, sheep to the slaughter. They are heroes. And I remember what a tour guide said once. Hitler said that the Jewish people were the lowest common denominator of genetic material. It's a kind of disgusting social Darwinist idea. The Jews are weak. They're vermin. They need to be eliminated for the sake of Germany, he would argue, for the world. And what the tour guide said was, could not have been more wrong. Those survivors in particular were made of the best material. They were willing to give their all. They had found a way, by luck, by happenstance, by faith, to survive. Those people are of the best, quote unquote, spiritual genetic material. And that's how we look at our survivors up to this day. So in honor of Rabbi Ephraim Oshry, may he rest in peace, in honor of his community who he stuck with and found those responsa in the ground, in memory of all the 6 million who perished, who had lives and stories, who were treated as if they were not human. We hold them as we prepare for Yom HaShoah this evening. Invite those, Jewish or not, to light a candle, to honor them, to say a prayer. Because we will not forget them, just like that tattoo, which Rabbi Oshry said cannot be taken off the arm. Our job is to put a tattoo, in a sense, on all of us, to make sure we never forget it either. Not only for us, but also for the world. And not to see that tattoo as a source of shame, God forbid, but as a tremendous source of honor. That's what to be a survivor is an honor. Boker Tov. Stay healthy and safe. Shalom.